The air surrounding the federal courthouse hung thick and oppressive, as if the atmosphere itself was bracing for the historic confrontation about to unfold within its walls. Reporters clustered behind the barricades, shoving cameras and microphones forward like eager combatants, each desperate for the slightest visual of the woman at the center of a political maelstrom. Then she appeared. Representative Jasmine Crockett stepped out of a sleek black SUV, her heels striking the pavement with the deliberate rhythm of someone who had fully mastered her own path. Even if the rest of the country remained unsure of what was coming, the press erupted instantly. Shutter clicks and the whir of video cameras filled the humid air, news anchors shouting over the chaos, vying to report the moment. "She's here. Congresswoman Crockett has arrived." An aide leaned close, whispering something urgent into her ear. But Jasmine's attention remained fixed forward, her gaze locked on the courthouse doors. The air carried a sharp edge, metallic almost, mixing the scent of incoming rain with the tension of history waiting to be made. She adjusted her blazer, smoothing the sleeve with purposeful calm, and began her approach. Each step seemed heavier than the last, weighed by the knowledge that this was no ordinary courtroom appearance. What awaited her inside was a reckoning, one that would ripple far beyond the legal arguments themselves. Inside, the courthouse exuded austere authority. Polished marble floors reflected the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, while federal security officers lined the halls with silent vigilance. Conversations were subdued, punctuated with the occasional nervous cough or whispered observation. As Jasmine passed, heads turned. Some faces showed empathy, others skepticism, and a few mirrored outright wariness. Today, she was the defendant, accused of contempt, of defying congressional subpoenas, of challenging boundaries that Washington preferred to leave untested. Yet beneath it all, her true purpose was clear. Not to defend herself, but to reveal the hidden truths so carefully concealed by power. And the weight of that purpose was palpable to everyone watching. As she neared the imposing double doors of the courtroom, a marshal halted, scrutinizing her identification with exaggerated formality. She handed it over without comment. His eyes flicked between her credentials and her face, and for a brief second, the rigid mask of authority wavered. "Proceed, ma'am," he finally said. The doors swung open, revealing a chamber packed beyond capacity. Every seat in the public gallery was filled, reporters jostling for position, congressional staffers craning for a better view, activists murmuring in anticipation, and even a few senators attempting to appear neutral. At the center, presiding over this extraordinary gathering, was Justice Clarence Thomas, his presence a quiet but formidable anchor in the charged room. He lifted his gaze as she entered, expression unreadable, a combination of patience, weariness, and authority. A thick stack of documents sat untouched beside him, waiting like silent witnesses to what was to come. Jasmine approached the defense table, her attorney leaning in close, whispering instructions in careful tones. "Stay composed. Don't let him provoke you." She acknowledged him with a subtle nod, but her eyes never wavered from Thomas. The room fell into a tense stillness, broken only by the rustle of papers and the rhythmic clicks of distant camera shutters. "Congresswoman Crockett," Thomas began, his voice deliberate, commanding, reverberating across the courtroom. "You appear before this court facing serious allegations: obstruction, violation of congressional ethics regulations, and contempt of subpoena. Do you comprehend the nature of these proceedings?" Jasmine's response was measured, calm, yet carried an undeniable weight that seemed to hang in the air over everyone present. "I do, Your Honor. But I also understand that what is happening here is not justice. It is retaliation." A ripple of reaction passed through the gallery. Thomas's brow rose slightly, not in surprise but in controlled irritation. "Miss Crockett," he said, his voice sharpening, "this is not a political platform. This is a federal courtroom. With respect, Justice Thomas," she replied, cutting through the tension like a knife. It became political the moment certain people decided that preserving power was more important than revealing the truth. Thomas leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Are you suggesting this court lacks impartiality?" "I'm stating," she said evenly, "that impartiality died long ago, around the time people stopped being held accountable for the influence and money they hid behind closed doors." The room hummed with unease. Reporters scribbled furiously. Clerks shifted in their seats. Thomas's voice dropped colder now. "Congresswoman, you are under oath." "And so are you, Justice Thomas," she countered without hesitation. The words landed with the force of a hammer. Even her attorney froze momentarily, stunned by the audacity, while the courtroom murmured in disbelief. Thomas raised his hand sharply, restoring order. "This is your final warning, Miss Crockett. Do not turn this hearing into a spectacle." I am not creating a spectacle, she replied firmly. I am here because I refused to sign a committee report that would have buried evidence of political payoffs. I am here because I refused to remain silent while others profited from their silence. Thomas's eyes studied her. Do you have evidence to support these allegations? From her briefcase, Jasmine drew a thick folder, its leather creaking under the pressure of careful handling. I brought everything with me, she said. Inside were emails, financial records, memoranda, names everyone in the room would recognize. A collective breath swept through the courtroom. Thomas exhaled, narrowing his eyes. You're treading dangerous ground, Congresswoman. I've been on dangerous ground since I chose to speak the truth, she responded. Silence held for a long moment. Then Thomas instructed the clerk. Enter into the Record Exhibit A, submitted by the defense. The clerk hesitated, glancing for confirmation. Thomas gave a curt nod. Jasmine laid the folder on the table, leaning back slightly, calm on the surface while her pulse thundered beneath. The courtroom waited. Thomas opened the folder and examined the contents with deliberate precision. Line by line, he scrutinized every entry, his jaw tightening incrementally with each passing second. Then he paused. What exactly am I looking at? The paper trail, she said evenly, of who has been purchasing influence in Congress and who has been selling it. Whispers swept the gallery. Thomas closed the folder slowly, pressing his hand against the leather cover. His expression was unreadable, yet behind it lay a subtle recognition, perhaps even apprehension. You understand the gravity of your allegations, he said finally. I do, she replied, and I also understand why most people never make it this far. Her attorney shifted, unease written across his face. She raised her hand gently to quiet him. Justice Thomas, she continued, I did not come here to destroy anyone. I came here because this country cannot continue pretending corruption is patriotism. If that is a crime, I will accept it proudly. The courtroom fell into thick, suffocating silence. Thomas leaned back, fingers steepled. You speak as if corruption is new, Congresswoman. As if you did not willingly engage in the system you now condemn. I did not choose the system, she said. I chose to fight it from within. That is why I am here. That is why you are trying to silence me. Trying to silence you? Yes, she said firmly, because once the truth leaves this room, it will not stop. For the first time, Thomas's gaze wavered, his hand hovering over the gavel. Cameras captured the brief pause before he spoke again. This court will recess for 1 hour. The gavel struck. Its echo filled the chamber. Yet everyone understood that this was no ordinary recess. Something irreversible had begun. Jasmine remained seated, hands folded, eyes fixed on the bench where Thomas had been, unafraid now, because the truth had entered the record. Before we dive deeper into this absolutely explosive confrontation that has captivated the nation, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Activate that notification bell so you don't miss any of the political drama currently shaking Washington to its core. Jasmine rose slowly. The marble floor echoed beneath her measured steps as she walked toward the gallery. Reporters whispered. Phones buzzed. Cameras tried to sneak images despite officers' attempts to block them. Her attorney touched her arm, murmuring, "We should exit quietly." She didn't. Instead, she faced the lenses directly, eyes piercing through the crowd as if daring the world to ignore what had just unfolded. Her gaze said what her words had yet to. Voices can be silenced, but records cannot. Outside, the courthouse plaza had become a battlefield of sound and color. Protesters' chants collided in the humid air. Some held signs demanding justice for Crockett. Others waved posters demanding her resignation. The energy was electric, pulsing through every shout, every flash, every live broadcast feed. When Jasmine finally stepped into the open, microphones swarmed around her like persistent insects. Congresswoman, are you under investigation? Will you release the documents? Is it true you accused sitting members of Congress of corruption? Her lawyer attempted to intervene. No comment at this time, but she lifted her hand. I'll speak, she said. The crowd fell still. She looked straight into the nearest camera, her expression calm yet unyielding. The truth doesn't need permission to be heard, she stated. It didn't create the storm. I just stopped pretending it wasn't raining. A murmur rolled through the crowd, and before anyone could press further, she turned and walked toward the waiting vehicle. Inside the car, silence enveloped her. The driver remained quiet. Her lawyer stared at his phone, scrolling through headlines that were already spreading like wildfire. Breaking Crockett defies Supreme Court justice in explosive hearing. Documents expose alleged congressional payoffs. I'll take the sentence proudly, says Jasmine Crockett. He exhaled. They're going to come after you harder now, he said quietly. I know you realize this could end your career. Jasmine turned her gaze toward the courthouse. Disappearing behind them, the building stood like a monument, cold, unbending, yet somehow smaller than it had ever appeared before. Maybe, she said. Or maybe it's just the beginning, her lawyer frowned. You think people will believe you? They already do, she answered. They just needed someone to say it out loud. The car merged into traffic, swallowed by a sea of flashing lights and camera crews. From above, the city resembled a circuit board, alive, buzzing, dangerously connected. Inside that moving bubble of silence, Jasmine closed her eyes briefly. The image of Clarence Thomas's face, the flicker of recognition when he saw the evidence replayed in her mind. It wasn't triumph, she felt. It was confirmation. He knew they all did. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't the one on the defensive. The hour-long recess meant nothing. The machine outside was already running. Headlines, editorials, debates, accusations. Her name was trending on every platform, dissected by pundits and praised by the public. But none of it mattered. Because for Jasmine Crockett, this wasn't about a headline. It was about drawing a line in the sand and refusing to step back, no matter who stood on the other side. She took a slow breath and whispered almost to herself, "Let them come." Outside, the rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, drumming against the car roof like distant applause. The city blurred beyond the window. Somewhere inside that storm, a movement had begun, quiet but unstoppable. And deep down she knew that when the court resumed, nothing in Washington would ever be the same again. When the recess ended, the tension inside the courthouse had only intensified. Reporters who had managed to remain inside whispered updates into their phones, sending fragments of the chaos outside into every newsroom across America. The marble hallway buzzed with energy. But when Jasmine Crockett stepped back into the courtroom, everything fell quiet, like a film scene fading from noise into silence. The crowd stood as Justice Clarence Thomas returned to the bench. His expression was unreadable, colder now, as though something inside him had hardened during the break. He didn't look at her immediately. Instead, he adjusted his robe, took a sip of water, and stared down at the document still lying before him. The same folder Jasmine had submitted an hour earlier. "Court is back in session," he said, his voice steady but clipped. The sound echoed off the high ceilings, bouncing between the pillars. Jasmine sat straight, her hands folded on the table. Her lawyer whispered, "He's going to come for you harder this time." She didn't answer. She just looked forward. Thomas began. During this recess, the court reviewed portions of Exhibit A submitted by the defense. The material contains allegations of corruption at the highest levels of government. He paused, letting the words hang. "These are serious charges, Congresswoman. If what you've submitted is false, it will constitute perjury and obstruction of justice." Jasmine met his gaze. "Then you'd better hope it's not false." A few people in the gallery gasped. Thomas's expression tightened. "This is not a game, Miss Crockett." "I am aware," she said evenly. "That's why I brought receipts." He leaned forward slightly. "You stand accused of defying lawful orders from Congress and leaking confidential information. Do you deny these actions?" "I do not deny sharing what the public had a right to know," she said, "and I refuse to call the truth confidential." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Thomas raised his gavel. Order. He waited until silence returned, then continued. "Congresswoman Crockett, you've made grave claims against sitting officials, including members of your own party. Are you prepared to provide testimony under oath?" "I already am under oath," she replied. "And yes, I am." The judge nodded. "Then proceed. Tell this court under oath who you allege is involved." Jasmine hesitated for a fraction of a second, not out of fear, but to measure the moment. Every camera in the room zoomed in. She took a slow breath. Senator Collins, Representative Fairchild. A handful of defense contractors who funneled money through PACs disguised as educational nonprofits, and she paused, eyes flicking briefly toward Thomas, a member of the judiciary who helped suppress investigations into those payments. That last line like a thunderclap. The courtroom exploded a noise, reporters shouting, security moving forward, her lawyer half rising from his chair. Thomas's hand struck the gavel hard. "Order! Order in this court!" he thundered, but Jasmine didn't flinch. Thomas's voice shook slightly as he spoke again. "You will withdraw that last statement, Congresswoman." "Immediately." "With respect, Your Honor," she said calmly. "The statement stays. The truth isn't up for negotiation." The gallery fell into stunned silence. Thomas's face hardened, his jaw working as though he were holding something back. "You are dangerously close to contempt, Miss Crockett." "Then you'll have to hold me in contempt for telling the truth," she said. For a second, even he couldn't find a response. The power dynamic in the room had shifted subtly, but unmistakably. The judge who once commanded the entire courtroom now looked cornered by a woman who refused to play by his script. Thomas finally exhaled. This court will strike that accusation from the record. You can strike words from a transcript, Jasmine replied softly. But not from history, the audience murmured again, and this time, no amount of gavel-banging could erase what they'd heard. Her lawyer leaned closer, whispering under his breath. Jasmine, he's furious. Don't push him further. She kept her eyes forward. It's not about pushing. It's about not backing down. Thomas cleared his throat and tried to regain control. Let's be clear, Congresswoman. This hearing is not about your allegations. It's about your defiance of lawful authority. You were subpoenaed to turn over communication records related to a classified committee report. You refused. Explain why. Jasmine looked down for a moment, then back up, because that report wasn't about national security. It was about political security. It was written to protect donors, not citizens. Thomas frowned. That's an extraordinary claim. It's an extraordinary cover-up. She shot back. He studied her, the corner of his mouth twitching as though fighting an impulse to respond emotionally. Instead, he turned to the clerk. Marked that last statement as non-responsive, then turning back to her. Do you understand that if you continue refusing to cooperate, this court may recommend criminal prosecution? I understand perfectly, she said, but you can't jail the truth. Thomas leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. You sound more like an activist than a member of Congress. Maybe that's the problem, she said quietly. Too many members of Congress stopped being activists for the people who sent them there. That line hit the room like a sermon. Even a few reporters paused their typing. Thomas's tone dropped lower, colder. Do you believe you are above the law? No, I said. I believe the law should protect the people, not the powerful. He held her gaze for several seconds, neither blinking nor speaking. It was less a legal exchange now, and more like a duel, one that neither could walk away from without consequence. Finally, Thomas looked down at the folder again. Congresswoman, I've read the first few pages of your so-called evidence. If even a fraction of this is true, it could trigger congressional inquiries, resignations, maybe indictments. Jasmine nodded. Then I've done my job. He looked up sharply. And if it's false, then I'll take the fall, she said without hesitation. But if it's true, then maybe it's time others did too. Silence again, a long, heavy silence that filled every corner of the room. The judge's eyes flicked toward his clerk, then to the court reporter, then back to her. It was as if he were weighing the cost of every next word. Finally, he said, This court will adjourn until tomorrow morning at 9 so. The contents of Exhibit A will be sealed pending review. Jasmine immediately stood respectfully. Your Honor, sealing the evidence only proves my point. The people have a right to see it. Thomas's gavel came down hard. This is not a debate. Congresswoman, she didn't move. Maybe it should be. The gavel struck again, adjourned. But the echo of her words outlasted the sound of the gavel. As guards escorted people out, reporters rushed toward the exits, already calling their producers. Her lawyer packed the files quickly, muttering, That's it. You've lit the fire. Jasmine gathered her papers slowly. It was already burning. I just pulled the curtain back. Outside, the crowd had grown tenfold. News vans lined the streets. Protesters held signs reading, Let her speak and end the cover-up. Helicopters circled above like vultures, capturing Themament from every angle. When she stepped out again, the roar was deafening. Microphones thrust toward her, flashes relentless. Congresswoman Crockett, are you accusing Justice Thomas directly? Do you have evidence linking the judiciary? Are you afraid for your safety? She paused at the top of the courthouse steps. Rain still fell, washing the marble in streaks of silver. Her hair clung slightly to her shoulders, but she didn't move to fix it. I'm not accusing anyone, she said finally. I'm just revealing what their record already shows. The crowd erupted again, shouting questions. But she walked down the steps slowly, deliberately. The same calm rhythm she'd had that morning. Only now the ground beneath her felt different. Her lawyer caught up beside her, voice low but urgent. They'll come after you tonight. You know that, right? Every network, every office, every donor you've ever crossed. Jasmine's eyes stayed fixed ahead. Then I guess it's going to be a long night. In the distance, sirens wailed, part police, part news convoys. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, flickering red, white, and blue like a distorted flag. For a brief second, she looked back at the courthouse, the symbol of power she just challenged. And though she knew the real battle was only beginning, there was something steady in her voice when she finally spoke. You can hide behind the law, she said softly, but not forever. Then she stepped into the car, the door closing behind her with quiet finality. Inside, the silence returned, but it was no longer heavy with fear. It was the silence of momentum, of inevitability, and somewhere deep inside her, Jasmine Crockett knew the next time she walked into that courtroom, she wouldn't be Theon on trial. If you found this breakdown of one of the most explosive political confrontations in recent memory compelling, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our in-depth coverage of theme moments that truly matter in Washington. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think Jasmine Crockett exposed the truth, or did she cross a line? Let us know what you think and stay tuned for more coverage as this story continues to unfold.